When people talk about the greatest first-person shooters ever made, you'll usually hear names like Halo, Call of Duty, or Half-Life. But there's one game that always seems to get mentioned by people who've actually played it, and that's Titanfall 2. Released back in 2016 by Respawn Entertainment, Titanfall 2 is one of those games that almost everybody agrees is brilliant, yet somehow it never became the huge commercial success it deserved. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know this is a bit of a special one for me. Before I started making review videos, this was actually an Apex Legends channel. I played Apex for around 4.5 years, and for the first couple of those years I never actually touched any Titanfall game. It wasn't until later that I finally gave it a go, and it suddenly made perfect sense why Apex feels so good to play. Ever since then, I've joined the thousands of people begging Respawn to finally give us Titanfall 3. So after replaying Titanfall 2 again in 2026, does it still deserve all the praise, or has nostalgia carried it further than it should? So one thing that surprised almost everybody back in 2016 was just how good the campaign actually was. The original Titanfall, well, it never had a traditional campaign. It was mostly a multiplayer game with a loose story wrapped around it, and Titanfall 2 completely changed that. You play as Jack Cooper, an ordinary militia rifleman with dreams of one day becoming a pilot. After an early battle goes wrong, Jack unexpectedly inherits one of the most advanced Titans ever, BT-7274. From that moment onwards, the story becomes far more than just another military shooter. BT isn't just a vehicle you climb into here and there, he's your partner throughout the entire game. The relationship between Jack and BT slowly develops over the course of the campaign, and honestly, it's one of the best examples of character writing I've seen in any FPS. BT is a completely logical, literal and machine-like, while Jack is emotional and constantly adapting to situations. Somehow the chemistry between the two just works perfectly. There's even cool interactions where you can choose what line you want to respond to BT to, and some of them can be extremely humorous, whereas others can deep pretty well into BT's past. The overall plot revolves around stopping the IMC from using a devastating super weapon known as the Fold Weapon, capable of wiping entire planets off the map. It's not necessarily the most original sci-fi story ever written, but it's placed brilliantly. There's always another objective, another twist, or another incredible set piece waiting around the corner. What really separates Titanfall 2 from most shooters though is its level design. Every single mission introduces something completely different. One level focuses heavily on Titan combat, another becomes a huge factory where entire buildings are literally being manufactured around you. Then there's the Effect and Cause mission, which is still regarded as one of the greatest FPS missions ever created. Without spoiling too much, you're given the ability to instantly swap between two different timelines, allowing you to solve puzzles, avoid danger, and completely outsmart your enemies. Even today, it's an absolute genius piece of level design. The campaign itself only lasts around 6 to 8 hours depending on the difficulty, but honestly, I wouldn't really change that. It never overstays its welcome, there's almost no filler, and every mission feels memorable. If anything, my biggest complaint is that I simply wanted more of it. So let's have a look at the graphics, because for a 10-year-old game, Titanfall 2 still looks fantastic. Respawn absolutely nailed the visual design. The environments constantly change throughout the campaign, taking you from a dense forest, industrial factories to futuristic cities, research facilities, and giant manufacturing plants. The amount of visual variety means the game never really gets boring to look at. Character models still hold up surprisingly well, and while Titans themselves look absolutely incredible. Each Titan feels like an enormous machine with real weight behind every movement. The lighting looks great, particle effects are excellent, explosions feel powerful, everything just has that polished AAA feel. Performance is another area where Titanfall 2 deserves praise. Unlike a lot of modern releases, this game runs extremely well even for fairly modest hardware. It's smooth, responsive and clearly optimised properly. Considering how many games nowadays launch with stuttering issues or poor performance, it's refreshing to go back and play something that works amazingly well. But look, it's all good and well talking about the graphics, but if there's one reason Titanfall 2 is remembered so fondly, it's because of the movement. I genuinely don't think there's another shooter quite like it, apart from probably Apex. You've got wall running, double jumping, sliding, mantling, grappling across huge sections of the map, everything just flows together so naturally. The skill ceiling is incredibly high, but what's clever is that the basics are just very easy to understand. Within minutes you're flying around maps feeling like an action hero. Mastering the movement though can take around, well, hundreds of hours. That's exactly how movement systems should work. Easy to learn, but very difficult to truly master. Coming from Apex Legends, it's obvious where Respawn got many of their ideas. You can feel that DNA everywhere. The gunplay is equally impressive. Weapons feel punchy, recoil feels satisfying, and every gun has its own role. Whether you're using assault rifles, SMGs or sniper rifles, or even anti-Titan weapons, everything just feels balanced and really enjoyable to play with. Now of course this wouldn't be Titanfall without, well, Titans, and this is where the game becomes something really unique, separating it from any other FPS. One minute you're sprinting across rooftops as an agile pilot, the next you're climbing inside a giant mech and completely changing how combat works. Instead of simply taking Titans' stronger versions of the player, Respawn made them feel like entirely different characters. They're slower, heavier and more tactical, yet incredibly satisfying. The campaign constantly mixes pilot gameplay with Titan gameplay, meaning neither become really repetitive. BT also gains different combat loadouts throughout the game. Want to launch rockets or use giant laser cannons? Carry a massive heavy machine gun or flamethrower? Well, there's plenty of variety here to choose from. Every loadout generally changes how BT plays, and even online you can customise all of these options to suit how you want to play. Another thing I really enjoyed, especially about the campaign, was the boss fights. Throughout the campaign you face these Apex Predators, a group of elite mercenary pilots. Each boss has their own Titan, their own abilities and their own personality, even their own fighting style. Instead of simply increasing enemy health, every encounter asks you to adapt and try something different. Some rush you aggressively, others stay at range. Some rely on overwhelming firepower, while others focus on speed. It just keeps the campaign constantly feeling fresh, and it means that those boss fights never feel the same. Everything's unique about them and really enjoyable to play. It's also great that when you defeat him, most of the time you'll be able to get their loadout and try it out for yourself and see if you can perform just like the Apex Predators can. So I've talked a lot about the campaign there, but honestly, there's also the multiplayer to really deep dive into, and honestly, it's still absolutely brilliant. Despite being almost, well, it is 10 years old now, you can still find games without too much trouble. I tried to find a game, my first game on, and well, I found it within seconds, immediately connected. The only downside is that most of the remaining player base now have thousands of hours logged into this system. So if you're brand new, well, prepare to get absolutely destroyed. Like I say, that learning curve is pretty steep with mastering that movement, and you'll see people absolutely flying around the map. These people know every wall run, every movement trick and every shortcut imaginable. But underneath that steep learning curve lies one of the best multiplayer shooters ever made. The balance between pilot combat and Titan combat is fantastic. The Titan classes themselves all feel very unique. Ronin specialises in fast sword combat, whereas Legion is basically a walking tank carrying a giant minigun. Iron focus on precision laser attacks, and Scorch controls space with fire. Every Titan completely changes your playstyle and just how the maps work. The game modes are equally varied too. You've got the traditional team deathmatch, a pilot versus pilot, attrition, bounty hunter. There's always something different to play. Even after all these years, like I say, the multiplayer, it still feels surprisingly fresh. There's nothing else out there like it. Not even really Apex comes close to this in having this nice, massive multiplayer, kind of 6v6, 12v12, you know, and having all this movement. Honestly, there's nothing close to it. So look, when Titanfall 2 launched, well, it launched to incredibly positive reviews from critics. Most reviews praised its movement, campaign and the multiplayer. The biggest issue wasn't quality, it was timing. EA released Titanfall 2 right between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, two of the biggest shooter franchises in the game. Well, it was almost impossible to compete for them. Because of that, Titanfall 2 massively underperformed commercially despite being one of the best reviewed shooters of its generation. Nowadays though, its reputation has only grown stronger. It's regularly mentioned when people discuss the greatest FPS campaigns and games in general ever made, that this comes up. Its Steam reviews sit overwhelmingly positive, with players continuing to praise both the campaign and multiplayer years after release. It's becoming one of those games that is a almost hidden masterpiece now. And honestly, I agree with all that. For me, I would mark it as, well, I've reviewed it as positive, and I agree that it's overwhelmingly positive. This is truly one fantastic game. So look, for me, the final verdict, well, Titanfall 2 is one of those rare games where almost everything comes together perfectly. The campaign is emotional, creative and packed with unforgettable moments. BT is one of the best companions in probably any game. The movement system is still unmatched, and the gunplay feels fantastic. Titan combat remains completely unique, and the multiplayer still holds up incredibly well despite its age. As someone who spent, like I said, the last few years playing Apex Legends before finally trying Titanfall, I can completely understand why the community refuses to give up their hope on Titanfall 3. Respawn created something genuinely special here. It's just a shame that more people didn't experience it when it first launched. For me, Titanfall 2 is comfortably one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made. If you somehow never played it, go and change that. You'll finish the campaign in a weekend, but chances are that you'll remember it for years after. And who knows, maybe one day Respawn might finally give us Titanfall 3, but until then, Titanfall 2 remains one of gaming's finest shooters, and one that I genuinely recommend everyone experience at least once. Especially if you've played Apex Legends and loved that game and have never played Titanfall 2, coming back to this feels like a home from home. You'll recognise almost all of the weapons, you'll get used to the movement fairly quickly. Honestly, if you've never done it and you played Apex, you really have to play this game. It is truly brilliant. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this review on Titanfall 2. If you did, please check out the other videos on the channel, drop a like and drop a subscribe for more. And until the next one, I'll see you later.